transition to our next speaker. It's Dan Butchko. He's the founder and CEO of Playcrafting, and he's going to speak about the actual vision of the company behind Playcrafting. It's connecting brands, creators, and fans through play. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin. Super excited to be here, everybody. Again, as Kevin said, I'm Dan Butchko. I'm the founder and CEO of Playcrafting. Let me just say outright, I love video games. Video games are the greatest form of entertainment in the world. They're applied in so many different ways now, all through the power of interaction and interactive play. Now, for me, my earliest memories, some of my earliest memories are actually playing the original Legend of Zelda on Nintendo with my mom. So for folks that might be fans of games and 30 plus years old that are joining us, you probably have some memories of your own from back then. But for me, some of my greatest childhood memories have been attached to the different video games I played, specifically with my family. Now, a little bit of background on me. I have a degree in social work and psychology from NYU. That's where I learned how to listen and empower others to solve the problems that they face. For the first 6 years out of college, I raised money for nonprofits that were looking to prevent and treat child abuse. So that was a fantastic cause. We mainly raised those funds through hedge funds and alternative investment bankers. It's there that I learned that a for-profit mindset and lifting up communities can go hand in hand. Now, one afternoon at my job, I made a list of every single video game I had ever played in my entire life. I still keep that list today. It's now over 800 games long. I keep it up to date every 6 months. When I was sitting there that afternoon at my previous job, it was that moment that I knew it was time to leave and pursue a career in games. And so I did just that in 2014. I joined a bunch of meetup.com groups. Folks might be familiar with meetup.com. And I volunteered with some different gaming nonprofits. But it was when I walked into my first Playcrafting meetup that I was blown away by all the incredible game creators and games that were from my own backyard here in New York that I had no idea even existed. So it became a mission of mine to give that same feeling of discovery through games to others. So I partnered up with the guy who started that meetup group, and we turned it into a full-scale business to actually harness and amplify the awesome power of games and their developers. Now, a bit more about the work that we've done at Playcrafting. As I mentioned, we started as a meetup group way back in 2009. It was, right at the outset, it was mainly a place for local developers in New York to connect with one another, show the games that they're making, have a knowledge share. It started out mainly as a place where we were providing events and education for developers, but I found a really great way to sort of connect the massive network of developers that we've been fostering and some of the world's biggest brands. So since then, we've now generated over 90 games and prototypes for some of the world's biggest brands and technologies. Something I love is that this has meant over $2 million in funding to independent game creators around the world. Now, independent developers and studios are typically more challenging to reach for brands in a directed way. They don't typically make themselves available to the Verizons or the NFLs of the world. And so that's where we come in. And that's where a really big part of my job really has sort of blossomed. We work with companies to identify their goals, then envision and execute on a way to reach them through games. Now, I've worked with companies like Bose, Verizon, the NFL, Google, L'Oreal, and many, many more. The work that we do at Playcrafting, I like to say that we like the challenge of fitting square pegs into round holes. Brands and games can meld in incredible ways that lift up both consumer brands, technologies, and some of the greatest names in games themselves. There's just so many different ways to work together and empower creators and touch players around the world. Now, a little bit more about my philosophy for enterprise level gaming deals. Now, if you didn't know already, gaming is becoming the biggest form of entertainment in the world. It's now bigger than both movies and traditional sports combined. Think about that for a second. That's how big the video game industry is now. Video games started out as a counterculture or a subculture, And now video games are the culture. Video games are a mainstay in culture. Now it's time to redefine what we call gamer. Now the word gamer used to imply a white teenage boy in his parents' basement playing games. I know because I was one of them. Now I like to say that a new definition should be the people who play games. And that's because people from all walks of life are now playing video games. There are mothers on the subway playing hundreds of hours of Candy Crush, all the way to hardcore players getting the latest VR and PC technology to play the biggest budget AAA titles at the highest resolution. And in between, there are millions and millions more who weave in and out of playing games on any number of devices. Now, I think it's time to break down the barriers for tapping into this market of millions and millions of players. Not everyone is eating, breathing, and sleeping video games like me or the rest of my team at Playcrafting. And I know that for something so big, it can still seem really challenging to understand why gaming is so big and how it can be harnessed in a million different ways. What I love to do is foster a place where people and companies can explore harnessing the power of games without judgment. And here's my approach. And I would suggest that if you, your company, your clients, brands that you're connected to are interested in diving into the world of games, take this sort of approach as well. It's really a three-pronged approach: educate, envision, and execute. So first up, educate. Whether you're looking to make a game that extends your brand, reaches players through events and esports partnerships, or even find new interactive ways to engage with customers, there are tons of ways to tap into what is now the biggest form of entertainment in the world. The most important thing across the board to remember is to be authentic in doing so. Players can smell a cheap product tie-in from a mile away. Just imagine if you were in the middle of your favorite TV show and bam, you're interrupted with a commercial break. Now, in the age of streaming, a lot of that no longer happens. And when we go back to traditional TV, it can be a bit jarring. It's just like that when you're playing a game, you're on an app, and you are interrupted with something that takes away from why you're there, which is to enjoy and play the game itself. Put players first above all. So in doing so, you'll need to trust game creators and gaming content creators to speak best to their audiences. They're the pros here. And a lot of the work that I do at Playcrafting is to sort of combine both creators and companies and make sure both are working in a way that are really amplifying the results and creating a powerful interactive product that can speak to millions and millions of players and users. Now, step two is envisioning. So much of the work that I have to do is in asking the right questions to help brands identify what they're looking to do in games. Now, on the marketing side of things, you already know, or you should already know, who your audience is, who your potential audience is. Taking that information that you already have or that you're building and then mapping it over to games is actually pretty simple. There are genres of games, there are types of hardware, software that really map right onto different kinds of audiences and different demographics. Now, a lot of this can be sort of taking an amorphous challenge or goal and turning them into a concrete plan. This is extremely hard. There's no one size fits all mentality. We really drill in with clients to ensure that their goals are being met in a way that everyone wins, from the execs at their company to players and creators. Again, with authenticity being the absolute of paramount importance, not interrupting that player experience, enhancing it, growing it, and adding to it. Now, step three is in the execution. So educating and envisioning can require a lot of patience when it comes to building enterprise level deals in video games, but it's so worth it. Matching Fortune 500 companies with the equivalent of indie art house game creators produces incredible interactive experiences that would not have otherwise been possible. Just some of the ones I can think of off the top of my head include a game called End Zone that we built out for the NFL, where the player is basically transported 100 years into the future for season 200 of the NFL. And it's sort of a Tron-like experience where the field itself raises up, becomes an interactive maze, and you are a running back trying to get through that maze and overcome those obstacles in a very neon futuristic world. Another one along those lines is a game called NFL Ultra Toss, in which we brought together the NFL and Verizon, and we found a way to build out an experience where people can all in real time, 10,000 different players, throw a ball from within the stadium to try to get it into the back of a flatbed truck right in the middle of the field. This is just a taste and a sample of what's possible when companies embrace games in new and exciting ways. And that doesn't have to be just Fortune 500 companies. It goes all the way down to newer startups. The question really comes into place around not just what your goals are, but what are the lessons that you want to learn if you're just getting started out. A lot of the process of game development involves prototyping and testing long before anyone is actually playing the game on their own device. So the same is true when it comes to brand integrations and games. Games have just such a uniting power to them. Our world is increasingly virtual, even as things open up in the wake of COVID-19. We already saw year on year that the gaming industry was growing and growing and booming in the years leading up to 2020. And since then, it's just exploded, and there's no signs of it actually stopping. This uniting power of games is just like in traditional sports. People put aside their differences in the shared spirit of competition and entertainment. And when brands, players, and creators can all interact in a way that benefits everyone and is not interrupting the player experience, some incredible things can happen. Now, what we've seen has been really effective are as such: prototype development, actual game development, event sponsorships, esports sponsorships. I know esports is a hot term even for folks that are outside of the gaming industry. There's so many different levels and ways to sort of connect and plug into the world of games. And here at Playcrafting, and with me specifically, I'm always going to vouch for partnering up with the folks who make games, because they best understand what it takes to tap into players, get them engaged, get them excited, and to spread the word. So that's where brands, creators, and players can really align and unite through games. And there's really nothing quite like it in the end. So thank you so much, everybody. You can go ahead and follow me. It's just at Dan Butchko on Twitter. You can follow along with the work that we're doing at Playcrafting at playcrafting.com. And I really appreciate your time today. Hopefully I gave you at least a little glimpse into the world of games. There's so much more that we could talk about. This is just definitely just sort of a high level for you.
Dan, thanks so much. As you were talking, I was thinking back of the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Right in the center of this movie, the Jonah Hill, whatever his name is, literally picks up a coffee mug for State Farm Insurance right in the middle of the movie. So I'm thinking, I'm glad that you clarified. This is not just like shameless plug of the League of Legends characters wearing Nikes, during the gameplay. I mean, it's so much deeper than that. But I would think that it's almost like a one-sided marketplace in some ways, where you have the consumers that would adopt this readily, but maybe the C-suite has a little steeper learning curve to figure out why in the world do we want to get involved in the gaming space. So can you touch on that real quickly, just as we just wrap up today?
Sure. So a lot of the work that I do at Playcrafting is typically through channels like the marketing folks and the marketing department at some of these larger companies. In some cases, they're looking to create games and generate excitement and spread the word and sell their products directly to players. And in some cases, they're also looking to tap into the growing market of game developers, because the actual creation of games is now so easy to get started. There's tools all over the place. All of the main game creation engines and software have a free version that you just get started with. So there are hundreds and hundreds of games just coming out daily. And so really it's a matter of just sort of tapping in on the marketing side of things and finding, well, where is that first step that we can go into? And I'll say, I think a great example of this is what we did with Verizon and the work that we've done with them. They've been a partner and a client of ours now for a number of years, since 2018. And we started just by bringing in 20 developers to build out some quick prototypes on Verizon 5G before it became available nationwide and installed in stadiums and sort of rolled out all around. That was a great small sort of like, let's get like the foot in the door sort of approach. Since then, it's been built out more and more and more, but really it's just a matter of identifying what that first step is. I know that a lot of folks at the marketing departments of larger companies go right to things like event sponsorship or esports sponsorships, and that certainly can make an impact. But what we've found is actually getting your brand, your product, or even just the message of your brand and product into something that is interactive can go a lot further and a lot longer of a way than just sort of putting a logo on like the background of a streamer or sponsoring an esports organization. That's where there's so many incredible ways to sort of play, so to speak, with the actual content of games itself. But it really is a matter of just getting that first foothold in at like the marketing level of things.
Makes your day more fun too, trying to figure out new and creative ways to kind of embed those brands. But
yeah.
And thanks for joining us today.